14 men, 14 eras, 14 undisputed WWE Champions. From André the Giant dying alone in a hotel room at 46 to Eddie Guerrero's heart-stopping at 38, this is how every WWE Champion died and why none of it was a coincidence. Starting with Buddy Rogers. The original Nature Boy, the prototype for every cocky villain ever to lace a boot. He truly walked like the world owed him applause. And in 1963, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation agreed with him big time, crowning him the first ever World Heavyweight Champion. Mind you, he didn't win it. He was awarded it. That's how powerful his presence was. But here's the thing. Starting the lineage sounds too flashy and glamorous, but for Rogers, it was the beginning of a tragic end. His 21-day reign was short because his body was already falling apart. Too many matches, too many miles, too many bumps on old rings that felt like concrete. Sure, he set the standard, but the standard cost him.
Here comes an aerial scissors by Nature Boy. This could help take the starch out of Valentino.
Later in life, the decades of strain caught up, and he suffered many massive strokes, each one worse than the last. Each one proving that the physical damage done in the ring never really leaves. Sadly, in 1992, at the age of 71, the original Nature Boy passed away. Too bad, he built the foundation that he never got to stand on for long. But the man who followed him didn't just take the title, he redefined it forever. Bruno Sammartino was everything Buddy Rogers wasn't. Quiet, humble, stronger than anyone possible. He wasn't a showboat. He was a powerhouse. And when he defeated Rogers on May 17, 1963, in under a minute, he kissed the old era goodbye. Bruno held the World Heavyweight Championship for 2,803 days. That's 7 years, 8 months, 1 day, and the longest reign in WWE history. No, really. He carried the company on his back, defending the title against anyone, anywhere. But the truth no one saw was the schedule broke him bit by bit. Bruno wrestled through injuries that would shut down athletes today. Torn muscles, cracked bones, endless travel, no rest.
In order to be on top, you have to be a winner. You have to be a top man.
Even clean living can't save you from stress like that. Unfortunately, later in life, his heart gave out. Multiple organs failed, and despite fighting to the very end, because that's who he was, Bruno passed away in 2018 at 82. Much like his death when he lost the title in 1971, the world was stunned, and the man who beat him became one of the most shocking champions ever crowned. At spot 3, Ivan Koloff looked like he came straight out of a Cold War nightmare. Thick beard, thick boots, and ultra-thick arms. On January 18, 1971, he stepped into the ring against Bruno Sammartino, and what he did blew everyone's mind. He beat the unbeatable. The crowd didn't boo, they didn't cheer, they just sat in stunned silence. Koloff held the belt for just 21 days, but those 21 days changed wrestling forever. He was the man who broke the streak, the man who carried all the heat so the company didn't have to. But while his run was short, his pain lasted much longer. Years of stiff matches and brutal bumps caught up with him. Later in life, he was diagnosed with liver cancer. It spread quickly, and despite fighting with the same intensity he showed in the ring, he passed away in 2017 at the age of 74. He may have been the villain in the ring, but in real life, he was another victim of the grind. And the belt didn't rest after him, it needed moving. The company needed stability too, and on February 8th, 1971, Pedro Morales delivered it. Charismatic, genuine, inspiring. He held the title for 1,027 days, and he didn't take shortcuts. Pedro, our Latino superstar, defended it everywhere. Big arenas, small arenas, it didn't matter. And the schedule during that era, don't even talk about it. They didn't believe in rest days. He set out to conquer everything. He didn't just want one championship, he wanted to be the champion of champions. He locked down the heavyweight title, the grueling workhorse intercontinental title, and the tag team gold. Pedro Morales became the first person ever to hold all three. He wasn't just good, he was the first to prove he could truly do it all. But every hero pays a price. Sadly, all those hits, all the travel, all the untreated concussions, it all added up. Later in life, Morales developed Parkinson's disease, the kind that slowly strips away everything, and in 2019, at 76, Pedro passed away. A champion in the ring and a hero outside it. He gave the business everything, and his body paid the price piece by piece. Which reminds me of our next wrestler, Stan Stasiak. Stan the Man Stasiak looked like he was carved out of concrete. Heavy hands, heavy chest, and the kind of wrestler who didn't need fancy moves. He just needed to hit you once and you'd be knocked out. With all those killer moves, on December 1st, 1973, he beat Morales and became the world champion. But he wasn't meant to stay on the top. He held the title for only 9 days before dropping it. Still, 9 days as a champion makes you part of wrestling history forever. But Stasiak's story, like so many others, doesn't end in the ring. His style was physical, stiff, and unforgiving. And that type of wrestling comes back to collect. His cardiovascular system slowly broke down, and by 1997, his heart couldn't keep up. So he painfully passed away at just 60 years old. Then came superstar Billy Graham, the man who changed the entire image of wrestling, the man who made the championship look sexy. When Graham beat Bruno Sammartino in 1977, who became a champion again by the way, the world title suddenly looked different. He was carved, coloured, loud. That was the image he created and the blueprint that every champion after him copied. But the look came with a toll that followed him for the rest of his life. Graham pushed his body to the extremes to keep that superhero physique. The drugs, the non-stop shows, the pressure to stay bigger than everyone else. They all stacked up until the system simply couldn't keep going. In 2023, he died at 79 from sepsis and multiple organ failure. The man who redefined wrestling's aesthetic became one of the earliest warnings that chasing an impossible body has consequences that show up decades later. It's so tragic when you truly think about it. Anyway, till now, we were with the champions of the 70s. But as we move to the 80s, there's one thing you have to know. The 80s were an era of, let's just say, hearts failing, bodies collapsing, and champions dying younger and younger. The Iron Sheik was the first to carry the belt in this new era. His reign in 1983 lasted only about 28 days, but it served one mission: to pass the title to the man who would change wrestling forever, Hulk Hogan. But the Sheik's shorter time as champion didn't keep him safe from the consequences of wrestling. He lived a long life compared to the others, passing away at 81, but even he wasn't spared from the pattern that runs through almost every champion on this list. Cardiac arrest, congestive heart failure, the same enemy waiting for almost everyone who ever held that belt. Because it didn't matter if your reign was a month or a decade. The job did not discriminate. The curse is real. Which next brings us to Hulk Hogan. When Hulk beat Sheik in 1984, wrestling became mainstream. His 1,474-day reign turned wrestling into a phenomenon. But to stay at the top for 1,474 days, over 4 years straight, he had to push his body through things no human frame was designed for. The pounding of hundreds of main event matches, the cross-country flights, the promos, the media, the fact that he could never be off, never be small, never be normal. He had to live as the brand every single waking moment, and that brand came at a brutal price. Because Hogan didn't survive that era without scars, not even close. By the end of his career, he had undergone more than 25 surgeries. Back surgeries, hip replacements, knee repairs, nerve issues. He once said that if you put all his medical scans together, his body looked like a war map. Every line was damage, every dot was trauma, every shadow meant something like a torn, worn out, or simply broken down. The heart can only take so much. In 2025, at the age of 71, Hulk Hogan died from cardiac arrest. Just like that, his story of strength and resilience came to an end. Now, by any chance, if you still think being the biggest star made things easier, the next wrestler proves the opposite. André the Giant. A once-in-a-generation phenomenon who stood over everyone. But gigantism was both his gift and his curse. His reign as champion only lasted 1 minute and 48 seconds in 1988, the shortest in history. Why? Because André, and the ultimate wrestling flex and swindle, sold the actual championship belt to the $1 million man Ted DiBiase. He didn't want the gold, he wanted the cash and the chaos. Pure sensational drama. But his life was a constant fight against his own body. In 1993, André died in his sleep at 46 in a hotel room. A giant taken down by the same condition that claimed so many of the champions who followed him. And then comes Randy Savage, the Macho Man. Intensity in human form. Every match felt like he wanted to outrun time itself. Well, he started as a professional baseball player who went on to become an intercontinental champion, holding the title for 14 frickin' months. This match against Ricky Steamboat was a technical masterpiece. But this was just the start. He then went full main event, winning the WWF Championship at WrestleMania 4. His 371-day run as champion from 1988 to 1989 made him the face of the company alongside Hogan as the Megapowers. But Savage lived fast. And sometimes when you live fast, the heart burns out early. In 2011, while driving, Savage suffered a heart attack. He lost control of the car, and we lost him. He was 58. And sadly, the list does not get any lighter, because next comes the Ultimate Warrior. Pure adrenaline, pure chaos, pure energy. He didn't wrestle matches, he detonated them. When he beat Hogan in 1990, it felt like a passing of the torch to a man powered by electricity. But energy like that comes with a cost. Besides the toll wrestling took on his body, he also had an enemy. For almost 20 years, Ultimate Warrior was completely cut off from the company that made him a legend. His feud with Vince McMahon wasn't quiet. It was loud, ugly, and public. Fans thought the bridge was burned forever. And then, out of nowhere, 2014 changed everything. They actually made up. What happened next feels unreal. On April 5th, 2014, Warrior's comeback weekend felt almost unreal. He walked onto the Hall of Fame stage, and the whole place just exploded. After years of bitterness and distance, he finally stood there getting the respect he had once walked away from. You could feel how important that moment was. It had weight. The very next night at WrestleMania 30, he stepped out again, this time in front of a stadium full of fans screaming his name. He was older, sure, but that spark was still in his eyes. For a moment, it honestly felt like he had never left. Then came Monday Night Raw, where he delivered what would unknowingly become his final message. He put on the face paint, his voice steady, and talked about legacy, how a man's spirit never really dies, how heroes live on forever. At the time, it just felt powerful. Only later did it feel almost prophetic. And then, the shock no one saw coming. Just a day after that speech, while out walking with his wife, he suddenly collapsed. A massive heart attack took him at just 54 years old, 3 days after the Hall of Fame. 1 day after speaking to the world one last time. It was sudden. It was heartbreaking. You see a pattern, right? This is not a coincidence, and I'll talk about it in detail. Before that, number 12, we have Yokozuna. A man who defied physics, nearly 600 pounds, but could run like an athlete. And when this giant miracle beat Bret Hart on April 4th, 1993, it felt like the coronation of a monster. A new era, a new fear. But the moment barely had time to breathe, because his reign collapsed almost instantly when Hogan ran in and took the title within minutes. It was one of the shortest title reigns in history, and it set the tone for Yokozuna's run. Spectacular, dramatic, but always weighed down by decisions that pushed his body harder than it could survive. And here's where his story becomes heartbreaking. Yokozuna was billed at around 505 pounds early in his career, but the truth is, his weight kept climbing. The travel, the schedule, the pressure to stay larger than life, the endless demand to be the immovable object, all of it made him bigger and bigger until his frame was fighting against him every single day. At live events, he would sometimes struggle to stand after matches. Backstage, he fought shortness of breath. On the road, he battled sleep apnea so severe that people would check on him at night to make sure he was still breathing. His heart was carrying hundreds of extra pounds. His lungs were working overtime. His joints were grinding away. It was a slow, constant battle that no training could fix. And it ended fast. Yokozuna died in 2000 at just 34 years old. The official cause was pulmonary edema, which means his lungs filled with fluid because his heart simply could not keep up anymore. It is one of the clearest medical signs of a body pushed far beyond its limits. 34 years old. A world champion, a giant, a trailblazer. Gone before he ever had the chance to slow down, recover, or reinvent himself. Now, by the time the 2000s and 2010s arrived, wrestling looked different. Brighter lights, bigger stages, better cameras. But the same silent danger followed the men who carried the World Heavyweight Championship. The schedule softened, but the stress didn't. The expectation didn't. The physical toll definitely didn't. The first champion of this era is someone whose title win didn't just shock the world, it shook the entire emotional core of the fan base. Eddie Guerrero. Eddie's rise wasn't supposed to happen. He wasn't the biggest. He wasn't the most intimidating. He wasn't the company's prototype. But he had something far more powerful. Skill, charisma, heart, a level of in-ring storytelling that made fans feel every punch, every comeback, every victory. When he beat Brock Lesnar in 2004, the world exploded. It wasn't just a title win, it was redemption. Eddie climbed through addiction, pain, relapse, and recovery to become a champion. It was one of those moments I will never forget. The kind of moment that makes grown adults like me scream like kids. But behind that joy was a reality that caught up to him too fast. Because Eddie's body had already taken decades of damage. The travel, the style, the past struggles, the pressure. Everything he had fought through left marks on his heart that no comeback could erase. On November 13th, 2005, inside a hotel room in Minneapolis, Eddie Guerrero's heart gave out. He was 38. Just 38. One of the youngest champions to die. A man who had just climbed the mountain and barely had time to stand at the top before it all ended. His death wasn't just heartbreaking, it was a massive turning point. Sometimes the ring doesn't kill you overnight, sometimes it kills you slowly. And then the shock hits when the heart can't handle it anymore. Eddie became the red flag nobody could ignore, but tragically, he would not be the last. Because the next name on this list is a different kind of story. A modern tragedy. One that proves even with new technology, new rules, and new awareness, the heart is still the final weak point. Bray Wyatt. When Bray Wyatt won the WWE Championship in 2017, it felt like victory for every fan who ever loved something weird, dark, creative, or different. He wasn't built like the classic champion. He wasn't the typical hero. He was a storyteller, a world builder, a genius who turned characters into mythology. Fans begged for years to see him at the top, and when he finally won the title inside the Elimination Chamber, it felt like the company finally listened. But Bray's reign was brief. 48 days, one of the shortest of the modern era. It wasn't because he didn't deserve it. It was because the company had other long-term plans, and Bray's character was often treated as a creative experiment rather than a long-term investment. Still, the shorter reign wasn't the tragedy. The tragedy came years later. Because in 2023, Bray Wyatt died suddenly at the age of 36. Younger than Eddie, younger than Warrior, younger than almost every champion before him. The official cause was a heart attack, but the story behind it is even more devastating. Bray had suffered heart complications after a COVID-19 infection. His heart was already weakened. Doctors advised him to wear a defibrillator, a device that could shock his heart back into rhythm if something went wrong. But when Bray died, he wasn't wearing it. And that detail cuts deep, because Bray wasn't just a wrestler, he was an independent contractor. That meant no constant medical supervision, no enforced protocols, no system designed to protect his heart beyond a doctor's warning, making this death even more sad than it already is. If you want to see more videos like these, make sure to subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.